The narrow pass of Thermopylae became the stage where courage stood against overwhelming force. In 480 BC, the Persian king Xerxes marched with an army so vast that its sheer size struck fear across Greece. Cities fell silent at the rumor of its numbers. Yet in that silence, one city chose defiance. Sparta, known for its unyielding warriors, sent King Leonidas with 300 of his finest soldiers to meet the storm. They were joined by a few thousand allies from other Greek states, but all knew that it was the Spartans who had formed the shield wall at the choke point between mountain and sea. The Persians came in endless waves, their banners darkening the horizon. Against this tide, the Spartans stood shoulder to shoulder, shields interlocked, spears braced. Every strike was precise, every movement drilled by years of relentless training. The ground shook beneath the charge of Persian infantry, yet time and again they were thrown back, broken on the discipline of the phalanx. The Spartans fought not for survival alone, but for the memory of Greece, for the belief that freedom was worth more than life itself. For 2 days the pass held. Persian bodies littered the narrow road, their cries echoing off the cliffs. Archers rained down arrows, but the Spartans lifted their shields, advancing with grim patience. Cavalry found no space to maneuver in the bottleneck. Even the fabled immortals Xerxes' elite guard were repelled, their reputation shattered against bronze and iron. The Persians had the numbers, but the Spartans had the will. Each clash was a test of endurance, and the Greeks proved unbreakable. On the third day, betrayal struck. A Greek traitor revealed to Xerxes a hidden path through the mountains, a way to circle behind the defenders. Leonidas knew the end had come, but retreat was never part of his creed. He dismissed most of the allied forces, ordering them to save themselves and spread the tale of what was done here. With only his Spartans and a few loyal Thespians and Thebans, he prepared for the final stand. The last battle was not a fight for victory, but for honor. Surrounded on all sides, the Spartans fought with the ferocity of men who had already accepted death. Their spears splintered and they drew swords. When swords broke, they fought with hands, teeth, and defiance. The pass ran red, the air choked with dust and blood, and still they resisted until the last warrior fell. Though the Persians marched on, the sacrifice at Thermopylae ignited all of Greece. The story of 300 Spartans holding back an empire spread like fire, stirring unity where there had been division. Their deaths became a beacon, a reminder that freedom demands the highest price but grants the greatest legacy. At Thermopylae, courage was carved into stone and memory, proving that even in defeat, the spirit of warriors can shape the course of history. The Spartans' disciplined phalanx held the narrow pass at Thermopylae against overwhelming Persian numbers, turning the battlefield into a symbol of courage and resistance. The Battle of Thermopylae was not a contest of equals. On one side stood King Xerxes and the Persian Empire, its forces drawn from across Asia. The army was so vast that ancient accounts describe rivers drained and fields stripped bare wherever it passed. Opposing this tide were only a few thousand Greeks, among them the 300 Spartans led by King Leonidas. At the center of their strategy was the terrain itself. The pass at Thermopylae was narrow, hemmed in by mountains on one side and the sea on the other. Here, numbers would matter less, and discipline would matter most. For the Spartans, raised from childhood to fight as one, this place was chosen ground. The phalanx was the weapon of Sparta. It was more than a formation. It was a way of life. Each warrior stood shield to shield, his spear thrusting over the top, his neighbor's shield protecting his exposed side. The strength of the line lay in unity, not in the individual. At Thermopylae, the phalanx transformed the narrow pass into an unbreakable wall of bronze and muscle. The Persians hurled themselves against it in wave after wave, confident that sheer numbers would crush the defenders. But the Spartans held firm, their movements sharp, their discipline unyielding. Years of training had prepared them for this moment, and each clash of steel showed the difference between soldiers drilled for war and masses driven forward by command. The first charges of Persian infantry broke upon the wall like water against stone. Spears pierced through armor, shields battered enemies to the ground, and the tight formation allowed no gaps for the enemy to exploit. Those who fell were replaced by their comrades, the line shifting but never faltering. The pass became a slaughter ground, the Persians' numerical advantage neutralized by the terrain and the precision of the Greek defense. Behind their shields, the Spartans fought with cold efficiency, not driven by fear or desperation, but by discipline honed into instinct. When the Persian king sent in his immortals, the elite troops famed across the empire, the Spartans showed no fear. They fought with the same steadiness as before, their phalanx absorbing the charge, their spears cutting down the best soldiers Xerxes could offer. The immortals expected to overwhelm by reputation alone, but their name proved hollow against men who lived for the battlefield. For 2 days the Greeks maintained their line, the Persians finding only death and frustration at the narrow pass. What made this defense remarkable was not simply the tactical advantage of the terrain, but the resolve that bound the Spartans together. They were taught from childhood that their lives belonged to Sparta, that to fall in battle was the highest honor. At Thermopylae, this belief became visible to the world. Each shield was more than metal. It was a pledge that no man would abandon his comrade. To drop one's shield was to fail the line, and failure was not an option. In this way, the phalanx became a living wall, every man part of something greater than himself. The symbolism of the phalanx at Thermopylae would outlast the battle itself. The Persians eventually found a way around the pass, but the memory of those days when a handful of disciplined warriors held back an empire became legend. The phalanx turned Thermopylae from a battlefield into a monument of resistance, a place where courage defied overwhelming odds. In standing firm against wave after wave of enemies, the Spartans showed the world that discipline, unity, and honor could shape the course of history, even when the outcome seemed certain. Leonidas and his 300 warriors made a final stand, choosing death over surrender, inspiring Greece to unite against the Persian invasion. By the third day of the battle, the narrow pass of Thermopylae was heavy with the weight of exhaustion, blood, and smoke. For 2 days, the Spartans and their allies had held the Persians back, cutting down wave after wave of soldiers, but betrayal changed the fate of the defenders. A local Greek seeking favor or reward revealed a hidden mountain path to Xerxes, a route that would allow the Persians to circle behind the defenders. News of this treachery reached Leonidas, and he knew the truth. The pass could no longer be held. To stay meant death, but to leave meant dishonor. The king gathered his warriors and made the choice that would etch their names into eternity. Leonidas dismissed the larger part of the Greek force. He ordered the allies to retreat, to live and fight another day, carrying with them the memory of Thermopylae. But he, the 300 Spartans, and a few hundred loyal Thespians and Thebans remained. They did not stay because they believed they could win. They stayed because their code demanded it. A Spartan warrior was raised to understand that retreat was shame and surrender unthinkable. To fall in battle was the highest honor, and to fall beside one's king was eternal glory. For Leonidas, the decision was not about survival. It was about what message would be carried to all of Greece. The final stand was unlike the battles before. The Persians advanced knowing their enemy was trapped. The Spartans fought knowing there would be no escape. Each strike of their spear, each swing of their sword was made with the certainty of death, and that certainty gave them a terrible freedom. They fought with reckless courage, cutting down enemies with no thought of conserving strength, holding the line not for victory, but for legacy. Spears shattered against armor and shields, and when they broke, swords took their place. When swords bent and dulled, warriors fought with daggers, rocks, and bare hands. Even in the chaos of encirclement, the Spartans did not scatter. They fought in tight groups, refusing to let the phalanx dissolve completely. Their discipline endured until the very last. The Persians surrounded them, arrows darkening the sky. The Spartans raised their shields against the storm, but their numbers were too few, their bodies too human. Leonidas himself fell in the fighting, struck down but unbowed. His death was not the end, but a rallying point, the final symbol of defiance. Around his body, the remaining Spartans and their allies fought with savage determination, unwilling to let their king's sacrifice be forgotten in silence. The ground was soaked with blood, yet the Persians paid dearly for every step forward. When the last Spartan fell, the pass was theirs, but the victory was hollow. Xerxes had won the ground, but he had not broken the spirit of Greece. The story of Thermopylae spread across the land faster than the Persian army could march. Men spoke not of defeat, but of defiance, of warriors who chose death rather than submission. The sacrifice of Leonidas and his 300 became a call to arms, a spark that lit the fires of resistance. At Salamis and later at Plataea, the Greeks fought with the memory of Thermopylae burning in their hearts, knowing that unity could turn back even the greatest empire. The final stand of the Spartans was more than an act of war. It was a lesson. It showed that courage could defy numbers, that honor could outweigh fear, and that death embraced with dignity could inspire generations. Leonidas and his 300 gave Greece more than time. They gave it belief. A belief that freedom was worth every drop of blood, and that some battles are fought not to be won, but to show the world that resistance will never bow. Their stand transformed Thermopylae into sacred ground, and their memory into legend, reminding all who came after that, even in death, warriors can shape the fate of nations. The Battle of Thermopylae did not end in victory for the Spartans, yet their sacrifice echoed louder than any triumph. By holding the pass and embracing death with unshakable resolve, Leonidas and his warriors proved that courage and unity could stand against even the mightiest empire. Their defiance gave Greece the time and inspiration it needed to rally, turning a doomed stand into the spark of resistance that would one day drive the Persians back. Thermopylae became more than a battlefield. It became a symbol, a reminder that true strength lies not in numbers, but in the will to fight for freedom, no matter the cost.